is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not
About 30 years ago, my younger brother and I were watching an episode of The Outer Limits called The Demon with a Glass Hand with Robert Culp. And my younger brother mentioned, oh yeah, that's the episode where they're carrying triple locks. I didn't even know what a triple lock was, but it sure sounded interesting. And once I learned what it was, I just had to have one. Unfortunately, what I didn't realize was they were expensive. As time went by, I forgot about it, but then my wife and I were watching The Mummy Returns with Brendan Fraser, and he was carrying a triple lock, and that re-sparked my interest in the gun. And one of the nice things about getting older is now you have a little more discretionary income, so I got down to gun brokering. It took over a year, but I finally found one that I liked at a price that was acceptable, and I acquired it. When I got the gun, the local FFL asked me, what is it about a triple lock that's so special? So I got to explaining. The triple lock is a product of Smith & Wesson's desire to show the world they could make the biggest, baddest, most Smith & Wessiest gun ever. They just lost a big contract to the military to their rival Colt, so they deliberately went out and dusted off a couple of old patents and over-engineered what Elmer Keith once called the greatest revolver ever made. This also was the first of the end-frame revolvers, although they didn't call them that back then. The novel feature that really sets it apart from other Smith & Wesson revolvers is that it has 3 locking points. One at each end of the ejector rod and a third one in the ejector shroud. This is a really interesting system and it works really well, even if it is over-engineering. Simply put, inside the ejector shroud, there's this rather oddly shaped piece of metal that goes back and forth when you close the cylinder. And as you can tell, this one piece covers 2 locking points. When you push forward on the cylinder release, of course, it pushes forward the ejector rod, which releases the rear locking point. But at the same time, it applies pressure to this piece that pushes both of the plungers in the forward part of the gun forward, unlocking both the ejector rod and the lock in the crane. And of course, these 3 locking points all open and close together. You can see the piece moving to and fro as I close the cylinder. Here it is in slow-mo. The gun was also deliberately over-engineered internally to give it a glassy action, which it has. It is the nicest action I've ever fired, including my rather expensive Python, which is my other great gun that I love. But I digress. Another thing that differs it from other end frames is this rather large notch in the frame. This is filled by this ramp piece as the cylinder is closed. This piece serves as the ramp that pushes the lower plunger forward, allowing the entire mechanism to unlock so you can close the cylinder. Unlike other Smith & Wessons, the ejector rod is not being pressed rearward when the cylinder is open. Ergo, the triple lock does not need the beveled ramp you see on the back of the frames of other Smith & Wessons. You see, there's no pressure on the ejector. Ergo, none on the frame of the gun until these 2 plungers seat, applying a rearward pressure on the ejector, which then locks up all 3 locking points. As a result, you do not need to bevel out the back of the frame. At the outbreak of World War I, the Canadians needed guns, so they ordered a batch of triple locks from Smith & Wesson chambered for .455 Ely. The Canadians took 5,000 of them. They loved the gun, but it was actually at the request of the Canadians that the shroud and the third lock were removed, both to remove potential failure points and to keep the cost of the gun down. It went from $21 to $19. We may laugh at that today, but $1 went a long way back then. Those are still on the market today also. There was one other thing that makes the triple lock a little bit different than other end frames. Although still considered possibly the greatest revolver ever made, people felt that the relatively thin frame could make the gun a little bit uncomfortable to shoot, especially given the grip technology of the day. So later model Smith & Wessons had slightly widened frames on them. However, the shroud made a return on the hand ejector Model 3, and has pretty much been retained on every Smith & Wesson end-frame since. You can debate its practicality, but it looks cool. Of course, the triple lock was the grandfather of all subsequent end frames, including the ones made today. It gave birth to a versatile family of revolvers that are still popular today. Get your triple locks, boys. They ain't making no more of them.